Welcome, everyone, to another edition of The Travel Show with your host, Ted Blank of Ted Blank Luxury Travel and Adventure. And as we do every Thursday, we like to chat it up about your favorite places to dream about traveling. And guess what? Ted Blank is able to make your dreams come true. How have you been?
I've been doing well, thanks. How about you?
Well, I've been doing great. Ted, you never cease to amaze me because even though we may have talked about a certain destination, there's always different ways to see the same place.
There certainly are, absolutely.
Even if you're a different age, I think, right? Or you with different people and you...
I think we travel differently as we age a little bit, and sometimes the inconveniences we might put up with when we're younger, we aren't as interested in putting them up with them when we're older, or maybe we just know better and know that we don't have to do that. But, I also think that whatever trips we've taken in the past might kind of influence the trips we've taken in the future. So if you go someplace and it's sort of your first big international trip, you may experience it totally differently than you would if it was your fourth or your fifth international trip. Some things that you would maybe be apprehensive about, you wouldn't be apprehensive about, and some of the things you'd really look forward to, maybe you'd look forward to them even more.
So you've been to many places many times, the same place many times, and every time you go to a place that you've been before, you take home something new, don't you?
I do. And that's probably one of the, as I think about it, one of the neater things about my job is that I do get to go to many places many times. And so oftentimes I'll see not just the main tourist attractions, but have a chance to look at something different that maybe a lot of tourists miss, or just take it a little slower. There's something to be said for taking it easy and not just go the whole time you're on vacation, but actually to take a step back and just enjoy being where you are.
I think a lot of people, when they go on a big trip, it's a trip, not a vacation. But you can have both, can't you?
You really can. And I think if you think about it just as a trip, I think you're doing yourself a little bit of a disservice because it is meant to be a vacation. And that doesn't mean you have to spend 7 days lying on the beach, if you're going on a trip to Europe, but you might want to go to a beach and just enjoy that aspect of it, or sleep in a little bit and get a late start. You don't have to be up at 7 a.m. every single day.
I think that's what a travel expert like you can really help us with. You can give us permission maybe to do some of those things like sleep in.
Yeah.
Or you can help us with the cadence of a trip.
Yes.
Because that's a really important part.
It really is. And I think, you probably have talked to people who have gone on big trips.
And they'll say, I need a vacation
from my vacation. And that's a sign you probably tried to do too much in your vacation. And I think you just don't appreciate it as much.
But you understand why people want to.
Of course, absolutely. People will say, well, this is the only time I'm ever going to go to Italy, so I want to see everything that I can see in Italy. And the reality is, if you keep that pace up, you're not going to enjoy or appreciate the things you saw. You may have seen more, but it's kind of like going to a buffet and, having too much of everything versus being a little bit more measured and saying, okay, I really want to focus on this and I really want to focus on this. And, that's enough. I've seen enough. I really got to enjoy it, and maybe I'll come back sometime, but if not, I saw it and I enjoyed it while I did it. I made memories, and I have good memories of that trip to bring back.
So that's maybe when you tell people, I love your idea of seeing as much of Italy as possible. Maybe we should tack on 3 or 4 more days, right?
Tack on 3 or 4 more days, or oftentimes I'll, be very blunt and I'll just say, I think we're trying to tackle too much. And that's very common. We all are tempted to do that. Bite off more than we can chew. And even, if we take a road trip ourselves, I've yet to meet somebody who doesn't overestimate how much they're going to get done in a day. And you know what it is? You start off the day, you do something else, and all of a sudden you look at your watch and it's 5 o'clock and you still have a 5-hour drive ahead of you. So that's pretty common. That's a pretty common piece of human nature. But when we're planning a bigger trip, it's something that, I really try to avoid so that you can enjoy things and not roll into your hotel at 10 in the morning for a 6 a.m. wake-up call the next day.
So many of the places that we've talked about, you've been to more than once, but I know that you have some favorites that you want to tell us about.
Yeah, well, one of the places, we talk a lot about Alaska, certainly one of my favorites, but another one, it's a little bit bigger geographic region, but it's the Mediterranean Sea.
And when you
Europe.
say that, in my head, I sort of think I know where that is, but can you tell us what that encompasses, please?
Yeah, you're basically looking at all of Southern Europe. So Spain, Portugal, isn't technically on the Mediterranean, but Spain, Portugal, France, Italy, Croatia, Greece, a little bit of Turkey. A lot of the places that people have on their bucket lists for a European trip border on the Mediterranean. And many of the top destinations in those countries happen to be on the sea, because back in the day, life kind of started out in the sea, and that was where a lot of people lived. And so a lot of the big cities are there. A lot of the most historical sites are there as well.
It's very old, right?
Yeah, it's very old. Civilization has existed in the Mediterranean for several thousand years, well before the birth of Christ, the Roman Empire, and even before that into sort of almost prehistoric times.
So the Mediterranean Sea was important to all cultures in that area?
It really was actually vital to all of Europe, but it was certainly kind of the trading superhighway of all those cultures that grew up around the sea. So certainly, and it was also a trade route that connected the Middle East and North Africa and even deeper parts of Africa and even China. A lot of trade came through the Mediterranean back in the days of the Silk Road and things like that.
It would really behoove people, I think, when they listen to your show to get out a map because that helps a lot.
It does help. It does help to sometimes visualize things.
Yes, to visualize how close some of these countries are to one another.
How close they are and how much there is to see there. And, I think one thing that happens a lot is folks will say, well, I'm really interested in going to Italy, or I'm really interested in going to Spain. And oftentimes I might suggest they think about taking a cruise. And they really haven't even considered it. But yet if you did pull out the map, you would realize, oh, well, it makes sense because I want to go to Barcelona and I want to see Seville and maybe I want to see Rome and Florence. And those are
doable.
Very doable, and in fact, very easily doable in a way that doing it as a land-based program would not be easily doable. And I think can be done in a lot less stressful of a way as well.
Because I'm thinking about some of the places you said it would be a standalone trip, some of those destinations on their own.
Of course, absolutely, yeah.
Or you'd have to get on a plane and then go through all that hassle and fly somewhere and then check into a new hotel.
Yep. And that takes up a lot of time. And,
does.
You talk about the time you're spending in that destination, rather than go from 7 a.m. till 10 p.m., maybe go from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. and then enjoy some time on a cruise and relax and get a chance to lay back. But don't spend time packing and unpacking. Don't spend wasted time on transfers between cities and airports and train trips and things like that. Spend it actually in the city.
And those are things that you can help us flesh out.
Yes, absolutely.
So who would the ideal candidate be for a Mediterranean cruise?
Well, it's very interesting because the Mediterranean appeals to really all age demographics. And certainly for families, it can be a great introduction to Europe. The past year alone, I had several different families who took, sort of their first big family trip to Europe was a cruise. Like a cruise through the Greek Isles or a cruise around Italy or something like that. And it can also appeal to people who have been to Europe many, many times before. And even if you've been there
on a land tour,
or they've been, maybe they had a son or daughter who was in college and was an exchange student in Europe or something like that, you can go back and you can see a lot of places that you probably missed along the way. And I think if you look at kind of the totality of the cruises that are offered in the Mediterranean, you would be amazed at some of the places you can go that you probably never heard of, but then you see the pictures and you're like, oh yeah, I remember seeing that picture in National Geographic or on the cover of a travel magazine. And it's like, well, that's part of this cruise, and it's a neat way to do it. So really can appeal to a lot of folks. If you're interested in history, culture, food and wine, even nice weather, it really does kind of run the gamut.
And you have said many times that there's a cruise for everybody or everybody's interest. Some of these cruises are really history focused or food focused.
Absolutely. And the nice thing about a cruise, too, is you can choose and do different things on a different day. You might spend one day going and seeing the history and going to the ruins and learning from an archaeologist. And the next day you might hook up with the chef on the ship and go ashore and go to the market and pick out the ingredients and go back and prepare an authentic, Greek or Italian feast in the culinary classroom on board the ship.
Amazing.
So those excursions really can allow you to do as many different things as you want to do. And I think maybe people don't realize the full spectrum of what you can do today. And in a place like the Mediterranean, the sky is the limit in terms of what you could do. You could even go for a seaplane ride if you wanted to.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I know that you are in contact with many different kinds of cruise lines, and each of them specialize in something different.
Certainly, and certainly.
Or are known for different things.
Yeah, and certainly they specialize in different things. Some specialize in visiting very small, boutique little ports that really are off the beaten path. Mm-hmm. And, some of the places that I've gone on a small ship cruise, we were the only ship in town, 200 people, just a cool experience. And, you don't overwhelm the city because it's such a small number of people. but some of the big ports as well. The port for Rome is an interesting place to go, and you can certainly do a lot of different things there. But some cruises are very focused on families, and they offer great opportunities for families. And, you and I were talking before the show a little bit about Thanksgiving and Thanksgiving with families and all the different generations together. And, sometimes grandma and grandpa are taking a nap and the grandkids are running around and, full of energy. And the neat thing is that there are cruise lines that really allow that they have the space that everybody can do their own thing on there. So there is really, I think, something for everyone. And in the Mediterranean, we really are spoiled for choice in terms of what we can do.
So what are some of the choices?
Well, I think probably the first thing people think about when they think about going to Europe or going to the Mediterranean is kind of the time of the year that they want to go. And when I was younger, the Mediterranean cruise season was pretty short. It would be maybe June, July, August, a little bit into September.
And why was that?
Because there weren't as many cruises, and that's sort of when the best weather is in the Mediterranean. Well, now the cruise season really runs all year long, and it picks up kind of in full force in March, and it really goes up until the end of November. And one of the great things about the Mediterranean is it's such a beautiful climate that going there in November, it's not like going on a cruise on the Mississippi River or Lake Superior. It's going to be pretty warm and pretty pleasant temperatures. In the summer, it can get really, really hot there. So the cruise season has gotten longer, and the number of places you can go has also really, really increased. And so some people want kind of, a highlights, like they've never been there before. So they want to see some of those big cities like Barcelona, Rome, Athens. And there are cruises that, can do that. And then there are folks
those are probably bigger ships.
Bigger ships are going to tend to go longer distances. Absolutely. Because they're bigger and they can do that. So, they'll spend the night cruising between two major ports, and you really get a nice overview of the region and a nice immersion in the different places you go. So kind of the introductory course, maybe, the 101 course from back in college. And then you've got a lot of cruises that are very, very focused on a specific destination. So, for example, you might want to go to Croatia. And, on a big cruise ship, you might spend one day in Croatia. But there are smaller ships that'll spend a week or even 10 days just in Croatia. Or they might spend a week in the Greek Isles. And the ship might be in port from 7 a.m. till midnight every day. So you really can get a lot of different experiences in that extended season, which I think makes it nicer, because if you've got a family and summer is a good time to go, great time to do it. But if you don't have kids and you want to go at a different time, there are so many options in kind of those little maybe shoulder seasons, we might call them.
And that's the beauty, again, of working with somebody like you, is you can find the perfect cruise, the perfect destination, the perfect trip.
Yeah, I'm kind of a matchmaker.
Yeah, you are, aren't you?
Too sometimes. Yeah, and that is really important, because whether you're talking about a destination that you want to go to and visit, or a cruise or a tour, or looking at all those different things, there is the right fit for everyone. But the fit for you might be very different than the fit for me.
And that's
it's
nice.
Important.
I mean, that's
and it's
good.
Great. It's great. And there are so many choices out there. Mm-hmm. The problem is most people don't spend their entire lives thinking about and working in this area. And I spend so much time doing it that I know about all the options that I think people wouldn't necessarily know on their own.
So do people get nervous coming to talk to you because they don't know what they really want?
I think people are. I think sometimes people think that they're wasting
your time,
my time, because they're like, well, we want to go to Europe, but we don't really know where. Or, we know we want to do this, but that's all we know.
And that's
and
your
I think
dream
that's great.
customer.
That's perfect, because then we can have the conversation. And it never ceases to amaze me. People will come in and say, I really want to do this, and I'm kind of thinking we're going to do this. And I'll say, well, what about this and this and this? And they're like, well, I never knew I could do that. I had no idea. And all of a sudden we put together something totally unique. And they're like, well, yeah, this is exactly what I wanted, but I didn't know I could even ask for it. And I think that is really where I can shine, and where travel advisors can really add a lot of value to a vacation.
And so if somebody is listening and they want to perhaps put something together, what are the steps for that?
Yeah, I think the first thing is just to, maybe do a little bit of research yourself. You can do some research on the internet.
Get a map out.
Yeah, get a map out, look at the map. But, you maybe have friends who've gone there, and definitely talk to them and kind of listen to what they've said and done. And, maybe make a list of, hey, these are the 5 or 6 things that I would really like to do. Or maybe these are the 5 or 6 questions I have. Because I talked to one person and said, oh, yeah, absolutely want to go to Paris. I talked to somebody else and they said, oh, no, Paris is terrible and the French don't like Americans. Put those questions down and then reach out to me, and let's have a conversation and talk about all of your questions and all of your dreams, and then put it in the mixer and shake it up and come up with the right recipe for you.
And I like when you said that so many of the big highlights of Europe are on the water. So that really does lend itself very well to a cruise.
Yeah, it really does. And, I just think back over the last couple of weeks, how many people I've talked to and, we want to do this. We want to go to Greece. What's the best way to see Greece? And we can talk about it. And a lot of times people end up with a blend of some time on land and some time on a cruise. It's really important to have the conversation. Because if you don't have the conversation, you don't know what you're missing.
Well, you don't know what you don't know.
You don't know what you don't know. Yeah, and that's fine. That's what I do. Is I help you learn a little bit so that you don't know less about. I don't know how to say it, but you know more about those things, and you don't know that you don't know about less.
Absolutely.
I don't know if I said that right.
Well, I know what you mean. So a Mediterranean vacation would be how long to do it justice?
Yeah, to do it justice, 10 to 14 days is a good start. If you've got longer, I would really definitely recommend that. That's a little bit different. It's a different mindset for people who are used to taking shorter vacations. But, if you're retired and you have the time.
I think that's a different mindset, too. When you're retired, you all of a sudden have time and you're not used to it. So
you have time on the one hand, but you're also not getting any younger. Mm-hmm. And so think about both of those things. And you might say, oh, well, I really only want to go for a week. Well, why not go for 2 weeks now, when you're in relatively good health and can enjoy it versus kind of postponing it until that date that never comes.
You see that
in the
happen,
future.
don't
I see
you?
it happen a lot, and it's really sad, when people have talked about something and then
or if
not
you
able
talked
to
about
do it.
going with somebody and then that other person or you aren't able to make it happen.
Absolutely.
And,
Absolutely.
Such good advice. This is like friend advice, too. Life advice.
Travel friend
advice. Ted, so we're not wasting your time. How can we get a hold of you, please?
Yeah, the best way to get a hold of me is to call me at 651-964-8245, or you can visit my website, tedblanktravel.com, and you can actually request an appointment with me there, or you can sign up for my e-newsletter.
That's always helpful, I bet.
I try to make it as helpful as I can.
We love that. So great to see you. Thank you. Ted Blank is the host